What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. Today it is June 22nd. It's a lovely rainy Saturday here, so we're going to pump out a couple videos for you guys today. I'm continuing my team-by-team projection series. I've already covered the AFC East and the NFC East. In this video, we're starting the AFC North. So we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk for about 15-20 minutes on what I'm just looking at, my preliminary projections for the Ravens, and we'll do a little bit of a recap to start the video. I'm gonna put probably a comment in the comments showing where you guys can check out the rest of the videos at the playlist. So check those out. Otherwise, you can use the timestamps whenever you need to click around the video. But let's get into it. What I usually do is I start with a brief review of what happened the year before. So last year, John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, his first time offensive coordinating here for the Ravens, and really not much changed from Greg Roman to John Harbaugh. They had 488 attempts passing in 2022, only up to 6 more, with 494. But you see a couple major shifts in that. Even though there was 6 more passes, they completed almost 5% more of the passes. They threw for almost, a little over 660 yards more. And then the yards per attempt were up 1.3 yards per attempt. Touchdowns were up to 27, down from 19, and interceptions were low. So even though they didn't throw the ball as much as they did in 2022, Monken and Lamar brought a huge increase in efficiency, which was very nice to see. So I'm happy that we were able to basically get more out of the same. Same passing attempts, but everything juiced up a little bit. So that is kind of a product of, Lamar getting hurt in 2022, and that's fine. But this team ran really well throwing the ball last year. Lamar Jackson played most of the year. He himself, 67% completions, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, MVP. So very strong year, despite not having a lot of passing yards. If we look at the rushing numbers between the two seasons, kind of the same number of attempts, 541 in 2023, up from 526 in 2022. Rushing efficiency dipped a little bit. Again, a lot of that was because Lamar missed some games, but basically 2,700 yards in both seasons. And then you see the touchdowns go nuts in 2023, up to 26 rushing touchdowns. That's up from 14 the year before. So even though this team, ran the same amount of plays, they had a way better efficiency passing the ball, and they ran for a lot more touchdowns in 2023 under Todd Monken. So it was a good year, and they didn't have a terrible year in 2022. Lamar got hurt. They still won 10 games, but, this team was a very good team last year, and they increased their total yardage to 6,500, up from about 5,900 the year before. Just everything was better pretty much in 2023. So we'll move into the 2024 projections now. Let's start with quarterback Lamar Jackson. And even though he won MVP, I don't know. I don't think he was my MVP. I think it should have been Christian McCaffrey last year. Lamar had a good season, but it was nowhere close to his MVP season that he won back in 2019. So very good year. He was just the best quarterback on the best team, I think, last year. So we kind of got stuck into that. But I do expect Lamar to be just as good, if not better than he was last year. I have him throwing for kind of similar attempts, down a little bit in his percents, but passing yards about 3,500, passing touchdowns 25, passing touchdowns 10 interceptions. Pretty good numbers. Kind of what he did last year, throwing the ball, just a little bit dip, a little bit of a pullback in the yards per attempt, and who knows, maybe that actually goes up with a healthy Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely there. But his rushing numbers, I boosted those a little bit. 155 attempts, 885 yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns, 3 fumbles. So kind of the same year for Lamar Jackson as he had last year. I think with Derrick Henry there, maybe they lean into the running game a little bit more in the red zone. I'm not really quite sure how that works. But either way, this is probably the best offensive skill cast that Lamar Jackson has played with. You're talking Derrick Henry now, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. I think Isaiah Likely's up there. Rashad Bateman and Aguilar are fine as 2 and 3s. But this is a very good skill set for the Baltimore Ravens. And I think you're going to continue to see Lamar Jackson play at a high level. So continue drafting him where he is. I believe he's my QB3. Yes. Lamar Jackson is my QB3 on the season, and not too far off behind the Hurts and Allen. So, if you don't like taking the first quarterback off the board, Lamar Jackson's usually looking pretty good there as the 3rd or 4th guy. And you can easily stack him pretty easily with Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews. I don't know if I'm super interested in a Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson duo, just because, if Derrick Henry has a big game, that usually means Lamar Jackson wouldn't have a good game. So I would continue pairing Lamar Jackson with his pass catchers and play it that way. But I like Lamar a lot. I think, despite him winning the MVP with kind of a softish, numbers-wise resume, I think there's room for him to actually improve in year 2 with Todd Monken. And I think I might be boosting his numbers going forward. Because, again, these are just preliminary. These are my first go-around at the projections for the season. I'm trying to get these videos out, and I'm going to continue to tinker them throughout July and August in training camp. So Lamar Jackson, draft him. I like him. They do have Josh Johnson as the backup now, so a little bit better veteran backup there than they've had in the past. But let's get to the running backs. Derrick Henry's in town. You have Keaton Mitchell coming off of a ACL injury. He's probably going to miss most of training camp, if not all of it. He had his injury late December, I believe. And typically from surgery, you want 9 months out before they actually can get on the field. So that's going to put him right at September. He might be able to be, in there for a little bit of training camp at the end, but we'll be watching for that. I fully expect Keaton Mitchell to hit the PUP list to start the year, and then we'll see when he can return. So he's kind of the number 2, number 3 running back for me on the whole season. Week 1, though, I'm expecting it to be either Rasheen Ali, the rookie, or Justice Hill. And I'm probably too low on Justice Hill. I think behind Derrick Henry, you have 4 quality guys: Rasheen Ali, Mitchell, Hill, Patrick Ricard's there, the fullback. But we'll see some kind of duo of Rasheen Ali and Justice Hill be the backup, I think, week 1, where Justice Hill is kind of the passing down back. But let's get into Derrick Henry. And, last year they gave Gus Edwards 13 touchdowns. So I have Derrick Henry at 11. I think I might be too low on that number. But, again, these are just baseline numbers. They did give Gus Edwards 198 touches last year. I'm going to give Derrick Henry 285, which seems like a lot. I'm not sure I'm comfortable projecting that many rushing attempts for a guy his size and a guy his age. So some of those numbers might come down a little bit, but I think I'm going to leave his rushing touchdowns probably the same. I don't think the days are there anymore where Derrick Henry's getting 25 carries a game. He's probably going to be more in that 18 to 20 range per game. If I, just off the top of my head, if I did that and times it by 15 or 16 games, you're probably looking at what's 20 times 5 games is 100. There's a chance he could reach 300 carries this year, but I'm going to bet the under on that. So 285 rushing attempts, 1,235 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns for Derrick Henry. And then he's not much of a pass catcher, but I have him getting 20 receptions on 25 targets, $145 yards, and a touchdown there. So 12 total TDs for Derrick Henry. He's coming out to 228 PPR points. I do think he's way more valuable in half PPR formats than he is in PPR. So, on your underdog sites, that's where I'm drafting him. Not so much on DraftKings drafters and in full PPR redraft leagues. I think I'm going to look elsewhere. But I'm very interested to see how Rasheen Ali looks in training camp. And also if Keaton Mitchell's able to participate, because that's going to be a huge news and that should move the needle on some things. But continue to monitor Rasheen Ali, see how Justice Hill's doing. We need to find out who's the RB2 for week 1, because that guy's going to have some value. But I think by week 5, 6, 7, 8, that's where Keaton Mitchell kind of comes back in the fold. And who knows, he might lose some of his burst and his electricity that he had as a rookie, but he still should be a pretty quality runner when he's on the field. So nothing really to note there on the RB2, but we just have to watch that camp battle. I do think there's going to be touchdowns and carries to add for somebody there. I do have Justice Hill as the primary passing down back. Again, I think Keaton Mitchell could come into the fold and earn some third down work, but I think they like Justice Hill in that role quite a bit. He did catch 28 passes for 39 targets last year, so I might be underselling him a little bit. I think Justice Hill's kind of a sneaky best ball pick right now. But that's it for running backs. Actually, I'll kind of just show you where I have Derrick Henry ranked. Derrick Henry in a full PPR, he's my RB14, so I do think he looks better as a running back too in that format. When I filter it by half PPR, though, it looks like he raises a little bit to 12. So I think he's a low-end RB1, a mid to low-end RB1 in half PPR formats. But let's get into the wide receivers here. We're talking Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Devontae Walker, Tylan Wallace, and Deontay Hardy. Zay Flowers is the guy. I think right now he's being drafted as a late third-round pick in best ball. Sometimes he'll fall into the fourth, but usually not. And I think that's a little too high for him, honestly. You're kind of buying him at his his fair value price. I don't think it's a deal or a discount or anything, but he's going to be probably, to me, around wide receiver 25 to 30 this year. That's, of course, banking in a healthy Mark Andrews. If you look at what Zay Flowers did when Mark Andrews was healthy for the first half of the year, the numbers weren't exactly spectacular. When Mark Andrews did go out, that's when Zay Flowers became the primary target in this offense. And I don't think it's fair to project Zay Flowers as the primary target in this offense as long as Mark Andrews is healthy. And right now I have him and Mark Andrews tied at targets with 115. So I might have to move some of those over to Mark. But for now, I have Zay Flowers at 79 catches, 115 targets, 935 yards, and 6 TDs. Last year, 79 targets, 108 or 77 receptions, 108 targets, and 858 yards and 5 TDs. So I do have him growing in terms of yards, receptions. I have him growing in everything. And then I did give him 10 carries for 55 yards. But to me, this is more of a profile of a wide receiver 3, someone that I can't necessarily I can't bet on him having 100 yards or 1,000 yards of receiving. I think he's probably in that 800 to 900 range. 5, 6, 7 touchdowns probably seems legit. Just more of a wide receiver 3 profile here from Zay Flowers. So for him to hit, you're going to need a Mark Andrews injury for him to be the primary target again in this offense. So I like Zay, not buying him a lot though in the 3rd round. Because I like a lot of guys later, whether it's Jaden Reed or Chris Godwin or, some of the Titans receivers, I think have a little bit more upside than Zay Flowers right now. So good player. I don't know if I'm loving the price this year. Wide receiver 2 is going to be Rashad Bateman's job. Not sure it's going to be anything relevant for fantasy. I think he's a best ball kind of guy, but you're never going to feel comfortable starting him in redraft leagues unless Zay Flowers gets hurt or Mark Andrews gets hurt and he becomes the number 2 target. So I have him going for 50 catches, 80 targets, 625 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That'd be a career year for Rashad Bateman. So hopefully he can get back on track. Nelson Aguilar is my wide receiver 3 here, 25 receptions, 35 targets, 305 yards, and 2 TDs. Honestly, I think he can do more. That was kind of what he did. Actually, it's less than what he did last year. Last year, he had a nice season, 35 catches, 45 targets, 381 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So just with a healthy Mark Andrews, I'm expecting a little less action for Nelson Aguilar, but he should be the number 3 receiver on this team unless Devontae Walker has a hell of a training camp and hops him. But I'm a little lukewarm on Devontae Walker. I was kind of unsure on him as a prospect coming in. The Ravens take him, which, to me dings him a little bit from being a sleeper candidate. I think he's behind some guys here. He might have a chance in 2025 to be a guy. But continue to monitor him in training camp. I don't have him projected for very much this year. And then Tylan Wallace and Deontay Hardy just kind of round out the room. So Zay Flowers is really the only target you want for redraft. Best ball, you can maybe take a pull on Bateman, maybe even Aguilar. And I'm not taking Devontae Walker right now. Tight ends. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar. I think you want Mark Andrews on your team this year. He's a late 4th, early 5th round pick in best ball leagues. He's a top 5 tight end. He was on his way there last year until his injury. 78 receptions for me, 115 targets, 940 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And I feel like I'm too low on these, actually. I think he's going to lead the team in targets, and I have him tied with Zay Flowers. So I'm going to have to adjust some things, and I'm probably going to get Mark in like the 125 target range, which will continue to boost him. He's going to flirt with 1,000 yards. If anyone's going to go for 1,000 yards on this team, it's probably Mark Andrews. And the dude was running hot last year. He had 6 touchdowns through, 8 or 9 weeks before he came back and didn't really look like himself. But also Isaiah Likely looked really good last year too in his starting duty. 30 catches, 40 targets, 411 yards, and 5 touchdowns for 13.7 yards per catch. That's pretty dang good. So if you ask me, I think there's a chance Isaiah Likely could be their 3rd leading receiver on this team. I have him as the 4th guy after Rashad Bateman, but if they do decide to go more 2 tight end stuff this year, it's not going to surprise me if the pecking order is Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, and then Isaiah Likely over Rashad Bateman. So I like drafting Mark Andrews a ton in the 4th and 5th round turn. But I want to start grabbing more and more shares of Isaiah Likely because, one, I think he's got standalone value and he's better than a lot of the tight ends that are going in that range anyways. Just I think he's better athletically and he's more talented. And you do have that built-in upside where if Mark Andrews misses the game, we're all probably ranking Isaiah Likely as a top 5 fringe, top 10 tight end for that week. So he's got a little bit of a built-in upside emergency case, and he's got some weekly spikes throughout the way, even when Mark Andrews is healthy. So I have Zay going at are likely going at 37 receptions, 55 targets, 445 yards, and 4 touchdowns, which is kind of what he did last year. But I think he steps into a more complementary role than being a backup role this season. So draft both while you can. And then Charlie Kohler's still there. Let's go ahead and look, and we'll do I'm going to start the 2024 recap. I didn't go over the receivers, but let's just look at the tight ends real quick. Mark Andrews is my tight end 4 on the year and likely is my tight end 26. So when you're drafting 3 tight ends in best ball, Isaiah Likely is like the perfect third tight end to finish your room. I absolutely love Isaiah Likely that late. And hey, if you miss on Mark Andrews, you should go after Isaiah Likely, especially like if you do get a Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson type thing going on. You tack on Isaiah Likely and you're feeling pretty good about what you got. So I like both tight ends. Receivers, I do have Zay Flowers at wide receiver 30, which again, there's guys that I like going later, whether it's Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Marquise Brown, Tank Dell. There's some guys that I struggle with, and there's guys that I have ranked ahead of them, like Jaden Reed, Chris Godwin, definitely T. Higgins, guys like George Pickens, maybe even Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk. Like there's a lot of bodies there, and I love Zay Flowers. I find myself it's a little too rich in the 3rd round. Maybe in redraft leagues he's a 4th or 5th round pick, which I like better. But for now, that's where we're at. And then we got Derrick Henry, RB12 and half PPR, RB14 and full PPR, and Lamar Jackson is my QB3. So I'm pretty excited about what the Ravens offer this year. They were a really good team last year, and I think they got better offensively. The defense is still going to be one of the better units in the league. And, I mean, you got Lamar Jackson coming off an MVP season. You got Derrick Henry, Hall of Fame running back. Year 2, Zay Flowers. Year 2, Todd Monken. Mark Andrews is back. Isaiah Likely stepping into a bigger role. I think the arrow is pointing up, and I'm not going to be surprised if this team wins another 13, 14 games this season. So Baltimore, circle them on your list because you're going to want some guys. And we'll watch the RB2 battle in training camp, and we'll see if Rashad Bateman or Isaiah Likely is stepping up more into a complementary role. But hey, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you for your time. Check out some of the other videos. I'll probably put them in the corners here when we're closing up. But thank you again. Appreciate you guys for watching the video. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a comment, even if it just says hi. Hello. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.